Right now, as you watch this, the best teams on the planet are fighting for a World Cup. Winning is the whole point. Winning is the dream. So let me tell you about the club that won, and it destroyed them. In May of 2008, this football club lifted the FA Cup, the oldest trophy in the sport. Wembley, European nights, the best days in 100 years. 21 months later, the exact same club became the first team in Premier League history to go bankrupt. Not a pub team, not some tiny outfit that never had a chance. A Premier League side, FA Cup winners, buried under £135 million of debt, with 4 different owners in a single season, passing the club to each other like a live grenade nobody wanted to be holding when it went off. And here's the part that should stop you cold. The trophy didn't save them. The trophy is what killed them. Winning turned out to be the most expensive thing this club ever did. By the end of this video, you'll see how a team can win the biggest prize in English football and go bust at the very same time. And the one number that turned a trophy into a tombstone. Welcome to the slab. Every autopsy needs a before picture. So here's Portsmouth at the top of the mountain. For most of its life, Portsmouth, Pompey to the faithful, was a modest club on England's south coast. Proud, loud, and mostly broke. The kind of club whose fans measure success by, "we stayed up again." Then, in the 2000s, money walked in the door. And with it came a dream every single football fan on earth will recognize. What if we stopped being small? What if we spent big, signed real stars, and shoved our way in among the giants? Manchester United, Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool? So they spent. Famous players, big reputations, enormous wages, a proven winning manager. And here's the genuinely mad part. It worked. On the pitch anyway. In 2008, Little Pompey won the FA Cup, their first major trophy since 1950. The next season, European football. For a few glorious months, a small club sat at the same table as the richest names in the game and actually looked like it belonged. It felt like the smartest bet in football. It was, in fact, the exact moment the trap closed, with the fans still singing. Because nobody in all that confetti asked the one question that actually mattered. How, precisely, are we paying for this? And what happens the day the money stops? Hold on to that question. Everything after the trophy is just the sound of it coming due. The bleeding was baked into the celebration. 4 wounds. Count them. Wound 1. The wages were a fantasy the club could not afford. To compete with giants, you have to pay like a giant. Portsmouth did, without a giant's income. And here's the one figure that tells the entire story. The club signed a striker named John Utaka for around £7 million and put him on roughly £80,000 a week. That wage was about 25% higher than what Arsenal were paying Cesc Fàbregas at the time, one of the best midfielders on the planet. Sit with that. A modest South Coast club was outpaying Arsenal for a squad player. Now multiply that one contract across an entire roster, and you get a wage bill built for a champion, resting on the income of a mid-table club. Every week, that gap had to be plugged with borrowed money. Every single week. Wound 2. The whole plan only worked if they beat the impossible. This is the mechanism that doomed them, and it's almost elegant in how broken it is. All that debt could only be paid back. The spending only made sense if Portsmouth reached the Champions League, European football's jackpot. The problem? Between 2006 and 2010, the 4 Champions League places were taken by the same 4 clubs. Every single year, United, Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool. Portsmouth's best finish was 8th. So the club's entire survival depended on squeezing through a door that 4 much richer clubs were permanently sitting in front of and had no intention of moving. This wasn't a risky plan. It was a plan that required a miracle on an annual subscription. Wound 3. The money man switched off all at once. The whole adventure had been floated largely on the wealth and the loans of one owner. Then, the 2008 financial crisis arrived, right on cue, and the funding got pulled almost overnight. And a club living paycheck to borrowed paycheck simply cannot survive its backer walking away because the wages, unlike the owner, do not take a break. Suddenly, a squad stuffed with £80,000-a-week contracts had nobody left to actually pay them. Wound 4, the owner's carousel, 4 in a single season. Here's where the story stops being sad and starts being genuinely absurd. Unable to fund the club, the owner sold it. And what followed in the space of one season was a conga line of buyers, each one announced as the Great Rescue, each one turning out to be a mirage. One Dubai businessman bought the club, then within weeks couldn't pay the players. He was later exposed as a fraud, arrested for stealing millions from his own wife, which in fairness is one way to fail a background check. He sold it on. The next owner missed his loan repayments. Control eventually landed, essentially by accident, on a lender named Balram Chainray, Portsmouth's 4th owner in one season, who opened the books and found the club was roughly £135 million in the hole. 4 owners, 1 year, each one quietly passing the debt to the next and praying to be somewhere else when it finally blew. So let's read the death certificate, line by line, because it is brutal, and it is fast. December 2009, Britain's tax authority, owed millions, files a winding-up petition in the High Court. A club that had played in Europe 18 months earlier is now being marched toward closure over unpaid bills. And the players? Going months without wages. Grown men on fortunes a week, opening their banking apps and finding a nice round nothing. February the 26th, 2010. To avoid being shut down for good, Chainray puts Portsmouth into administration. And with that, history is made. The wrong kind entirely. Portsmouth becomes the first club in the history of the Premier League to go bankrupt. The richest, glossiest, most watched league on earth records its first insolvency. And it's the reigning FA Cup holders. Not the fairy tale anyone had in mind. The punishment is instant. Administration triggers an automatic 9-point deduction. A team already scraping the bottom is now relegated on paper before it kicks another ball. And here's the cruel little poem inside it. That same doomed season, Portsmouth somehow reached the FA Cup final again. A financially dead club walking out at Wembley one more time in its good suit. The cup run wasn't a contradiction to the collapse. It was part of the disease. The magic, the hope, the maybe this saves us. All it did was let everyone delay the reckoning by a few more weeks. But a balance sheet cannot be tackled, and it cannot be substituted at halftime. They were relegated. The debt was still there. The party was over. And it wasn't even finished humiliating them. The very next year, under yet another new owner, a Lithuanian businessman this time, an arrest warrant turned up, tied to alleged asset stripping at a bank. His assets were frozen, and for the second time in barely 2 years, Portsmouth went into administration, took another points hit, and got relegated again. A club that lifted the FA Cup in 2008 fell from the Premier League all the way down to the 4th tier of English football in the space of a few seasons. They weren't beaten by a rival, they were beaten comprehensively by their own accounts. Every file on this slab ends with the one thing that actually did the killing. And with Portsmouth, it's almost painful in how simple it is. The debt didn't kill this club. The rotten owners didn't kill it. They were vultures, and vultures only show up because something is already dying. The recession didn't kill it either. What killed Portsmouth was winning. The club chose to buy success it couldn't afford, and then had to keep buying it forever, just to stand still. The trophy didn't ease the pressure, it welded it on. Now the fans expected Europe. The wages had to stay monstrous. And the only way to fund monstrous wages was Champions League money the club was never, ever going to reach. Lifting that cup didn't relieve the burden. It made it permanent. It turned a one-night gamble into a bill that arrived every week, forever. This is the trap of the trophy asset, and it works the exact opposite of how it looks from the stands. A losing club can shrink. It can cut costs, sell players, tighten the belt, and survive. A winning club can't. Because winning creates expectation, and expectation is the single most expensive thing a football club can own. The moment Portsmouth won, it locked itself into a level of spending only the 4 richest clubs in the country could survive. It bought a champion's costs on a mid-table income, and prayed the gap would close before the gap closed it. Cause of death: They fell in love with winning. And winning, it turns out, does not offer a payment plan. And yet, go to Portsmouth today, and the club is alive, still playing. It even clawed its way back up the divisions. So how does a club survive being the first bankruptcy in Premier League history? The same way survivors always crawl out of a disaster like this, and it's a short, humbling list. First, someone else had to eat the loss. All that dream, the £135 million of it, had to be written down to almost nothing before the club could stand up again. In an asset like this, the people chasing the glory take the hit, and whoever comes next inherits a club that's already walked through the fire. Second, and this is the genuinely lovely part, the fans bought it. With the owner's carousel finally stopped and the club flat on its back, the Portsmouth Supporters Trust, ordinary people, thousands of them, chipping in, took over their own club. And in 2014, they announced the thing none of the big money owners ever managed. Portsmouth was debt-free. Every creditor paid. It took the people in the stands to clean up the mess the people in the boardroom made. And third, they stopped trying to buy a dream and started living in reality. No more outpaying Arsenal. No more staking the club's entire existence on a Champions League place that 4 richer teams had a season ticket to. They spent what they had. They grew slowly. And years later, having earned it the boring way, they even attracted serious new investment, including, of all people, a former CEO of Disney. Turns out the happiest ending came not from chasing the giants, but from being honest about who they actually were. The club was never the problem. The belief that you can buy your way to the top table and just stay there forever, that was the problem. Time to sign. Asset: 1 Premier League football club, FA Cup winners. Cause of death: winning. Killer number: £135 million of debt. And 4 owners in a single season. Survivability: only after the fans buried the dream and started again from the 4th tier. So here's the lesson from the slab today. And it's a strange one. In business and in football, the most dangerous moment isn't when you lose. It's the moment right after you win. When everyone, you included, quietly decides the winning must never, ever stop. Portsmouth spent a fortune to sit at the big table. They just forgot the one rule of that table. The bill never stops coming, and it does not care that you're a champion. They say winning isn't everything. Portsmouth would like a word. For them, winning was specifically the one thing they could not afford. If you made it this far, you already know the deal on this channel. We put a dead fortune on the table and hunt down the number that killed it. If that's your kind of thing, hit subscribe. There's a fresh autopsy every week, and trust me, the drawer is full. And I want your verdict on this one. Down in the comments, who killed Portsmouth, the owners or the trophy? Tell me who you'd charge with the murder. I read everyone.